Greg Bakun here. Halloween is literally just around the corner, and I want to invite you to listen to our annual Halloween episode of GhostBox Radio on Halloween. We're going to have an epic 4-hour broadcast from 7 to 11 p.m. live at the beautifully haunted 300 Clifton Mansion. In fact, why not come out to the mansion to take part in person? All night, the mansion will be offering trolley tour rides, psychic readings, live music, and you can even take part in the ghost hunt we're doing in the mansion live on the air. It's going to be energetic, fun carnival atmosphere. Check out ticket options to join us in person at minneapolistrolleytours.com/Halloween. If you can't come out in person, you can still listen to us or watch us live on Facebook from 7 to 11 p.m. on Halloween, where we'll be doing a live paranormal investigation and so much more. You can stream it live on am950radio.com, watch it live on AM950's Facebook page, or better yet, join us in person at the 300 Clifton Mansion. Ticket information is at minneapolistrolleytours.com/Halloween.
The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host, guest, random reptoid, or chupacabra may not necessarily reflect those of AM 950 Radio, its affiliates, or its sponsors. Now, it's time to step into the unknown. There are things people experience but never talk about. A shadow moving in the corner, flickering of the lights, a disembodied voice. We invite you to talk with us. Share your story, share your experience. Because this isn't just your story, this is our story. This is GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun.
And this is GhostBox Radio on AM 950, where every night we talk about the paranormal, ufology, Bigfoot, and so much more. My name is Greg Bakun. Thank you so much for joining me on this, once again, ridiculously warm Monday evening, October 28th. It got to 75 degrees here in the Twin Cities. It's pretty incredible, actually. But you gotta make the best of it, and that's what I did. I went out and grilled, and I love to grill. And I did some pork chops tonight, and I really enjoyed it quite a bit. And I don't know how much more of this we're going to get, but later in the program, I'm going to have some ideas of what you can do with this wonderful weather that is happening around here. And also, before we get too far into it and introduce our guest tonight, I do want to remind folks, this is our big week, right? This is Halloween week, Thursday night, Halloween night. I just want to remind everybody, we're doing a live 4-hour broadcast live from the 300 Clifton Mansion in downtown Minneapolis. We are going to be there just talking about all things paranormal. We're going to have a live paranormal investigation happening on 2 of the floors of the mansion. We're going to be bringing in a special live presentation of the paranormal panel show I always talk about, Myth or Mystery. And we're going to have Ghost Inspector Greg. He is going to be doing cut-ins from a paranormal location out near Hollywood. So, folks, this is a great night. And once again, as I will be telling you once again later during the program, you can join us live there. Like if you're in the Twin Cities area, if you're in Minnesota, Wisconsin, wherever, you can get tickets over at minneapolistrolleytours.com/Halloween. And there's many options to join us in the investigation, take some trolley rides, just show up and take part in not only our live broadcast, but there's going to be music, food, all sorts of good stuff there. So that being said, it's going to be a busy week, but boy, it's going to be exciting. All right, we got better things to talk about though, because one of the things, and if you've been listening to my program, you'll know that I've talked a lot about aliens. I've talked about a lot of my own experiences lately that I've had with them. And so anytime I'm able to talk about them, get somebody else's experience with them, this is something that I am hugely, I find not only fascinating, I find it therapeutic, and I also find it as something that helps me understand what's happening to others, and is there any similarities to the stuff that I've been experiencing or stuff that I hear my friends experiencing. So tonight I have on with me Dr. Bruce Rapuano, and we are talking about his book, Dominion Lost, A Scientist's Own Alien Abduction Encounters. And this is going to be an interesting conversation, folks, because the thing is is that Dr. Bruce here, he is one of the only first person account to date of UFO alien abductions authored by mainstream American scientists. So this is going to be very interesting. Dr. Bruce, welcome to GhostBox Radio.
Hi, Greg. It's great to be here with you tonight.
Thank you very much. Now, and that's the thing, and this is where, I mean, you must get this all the time. The fact that you're a scientist, that that right away you must get people telling you all the time that just by virtue of that, it brings a great deal of weight to your story. I mean, do you get that a lot, and do you think that's a fair thing in general?
Well, I understand where it's coming from, but I have to, having had these experiences myself, despite the fact that I'm a scientist, I still have to respect and have an open mind toward anyone who is not from the scientific community that has had similar experiences to mine. But the only thing I can say is that what's interesting about someone who has a scientific perspective is that we're what we do, what our job description involves is making observations, analyzing, and trying to formulate theories based on observations. So we tend to be, even when things happen personally, to us, we tend to look at things with a little bit more of a sense of detachment, so that we can objectively analyze things from a logical or scientific point of view. So that's how I would characterize the viewpoint of a scientist who has these strange otherworldly experiences like I've had.
So I'm just curious, and obviously I'm not looking for names or anything like that, but I'm just curious in general, have you had other scientists or doctors come forward and tell you that they have had experiences as well, that they haven't been alone because you have written this book, or has that just never really come up?
Well, my goal in writing the book, Greg, one of my goals was to encourage people in the scientific community who've had these experiences like I've had to come forward publicly. But to directly answer your question, we know that hasn't happened yet, but they've come forward to me.
Right.
And I've had to respect their confidentiality. I will continue to do that. But I've had, in one particular case, a very, very high-level government scientist come forward and tell me their experience, set of experiences they've had over the past 10 or 15 years. I had an interesting case, and all I can say is that they became very interested in the phenomenon, never talked about it to anyone in their particular field, never mentioned it to any of their colleagues. In this particular case, had mentioned some of their experiences to a MUFON investigator, and found the MUFON investigator said, "You know what? That happened to me exactly the way it happened to you."
Wow.
As I say, I can't give up anything more than that.
Nope.
But the answer to your question is yes. Scientists have come forward to me privately, and I would wish they would find the comfort and be able to come forward publicly as well.
I suppose it's hard, and I certainly can understand that. Even in the confines of this program, when I'm sitting there and I've done a multitude of shows where I'm putting out my heart in terms of what I've experienced and stuff, I still, in the back of my mind, I always wonder, well, what's the ramifications of that? If I was still working like a corporate job or something like that, there would be a second guess, I think, a little bit of like, how does this, because I've had a job where just my paranormal background, and I wasn't even doing anything with it, eventually got me fired. So, it's just, it can't help but wonder. And we're going to get into, folks, we're going to get into what's going on here, what Dr. Bruce had experienced. But I do want to ask you, when it came time, when you decided to write the book, was it an easy I'm going to write this, and this I'm 100% behind writing this, and I don't feel like there's going to be any repercussions? Or was that a process for you to get to the point of writing this experience?
Greg, it really was a process
Yeah.
because I had been holding back the knowledge of these experiences from all my friends, colleagues, family. The only person in the world I talked to about these experiences was my wife. But I'm talking about decades, for 30 or 40 years. You're probably aware of the great alien abduction books that came out by the groundbreaking investigators like Dr. John Mack, Bud
Yeah.
Hopkins, and,
Yeah.
and Dr. David Jacobs in the 80s. And at that time, I was at the beginning of my career as a biomedical research scientist. And I knew that if I came forward, I could have written a book at that time, because I was just struck by how everything that had happened to me had so closely paralleled the accounts of hundreds and thousands of abduction witnesses that these abduction investigators had written about. But I knew that I would be harming my career permanently.
Yeah.
I probably would be harming the careers of the colleagues that did research with me.
Mm-hmm.
So I really waited until there was a point in time when it looked as if there was a chance that real disclosure was going to be imminent.
Yeah.
Now, Lou Elizondo has come out with his book Imminent, and I
Yep.
thought, well, I'm at the end of my career. I'm more established, and I really can suffer the slings and arrows, which haven't really come yet, of criticism from my colleagues and other people in the scientific community. I thought it was in the public interest for me to come forward.
Sure. Sure. And as far as it's concerned, like before this happened to you, before this abduction, did you have any interest in aliens? Did you have any was any part of it interesting to you, or did it all come when you got abducted? And I'll let you grab your drink of water there.
Thank you. I'm trying to get over this cold.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
As a youngster, maybe for a couple of years, 8, 9, and 10 years old, I was interested in the 60s. And then I got fascinated with the space program. The first landing of the first astronauts on the moon.
Sure.
And I really forgot about it. But to tell you the truth, as I got into my teens and 20s and 30s, I would read books about UFOs, for entertainment. I really didn't know what to make of it. It wasn't until I was in my late 20s, maybe around 30 years old, that these books came out where what I was reading now really hit close to home. That people were reporting things that, the way I describe it is, I could check all the boxes, every single box, in what I call the alien abduction scenario. And in the mid 80s, late 80s, I was forced to conclude that the phenomenon was real. Not only that, it had happened to me.
Right.
So, I really, it hit me kind of unexpectedly. I've been, aware of the phenomenon for most of my life, but I really had to come to terms with it probably when the first great alien abduction books had come out in America, as I say, maybe around 40 years ago. And then I had to wake up to the fact that this wasn't just a mere possibility or source of entertainment in books and the movies. This was absolutely real, as far as I was concerned.
Now, before we get into the meat of it, when did you when did you have your abduction, and when did you write the book? How much time between the two?
Well, the abduction happened, Greg, in the 60s. And I think maybe 20, 25 years later was when I wrote the book.
Okay.
So that was a lot of time that elapsed.
Absolutely. No, it has been. Why don't we go ahead and do this? I want to go ahead and take our first break because I want to maybe if you want to have some more water and get yourself situated.
Thank you.
And then what we'll do then is we're going to come back. We're going to talk to Bruce Rapuano about his book, Dominion Lost, The Scientist's Own Alien Abduction Encounters, and start really talking about it. You're listening to GhostBox Radio on AM 950. Now, as you remember at the top of the program, I had mentioned the fact that it's pretty warm here in the Twin Cities. It's very nice out, especially for the end of October going into early November. And I just want to let you all know, you all know Lily Putt over in Coon Rapids, right? It does mini golf. It does a lot of different things. Well, over at Lily Putt this weekend, you got to go check it out. There's Haunted Glow Golf, okay? Haunted Glow Golf. And it's happening this weekend. It's from October 31st to November 2nd. And you're going to be able to go and do some golf around some course. Will feature awesome Halloween decorations, including fog machines, Halloween inflatables, so much more. It's going to include the Horrorcade, the Forsaken Path Reborn. Horrorcade is located in the course, while the Forsaken Path is outside of the course, allowing guests to enhance their experiences before or after the round of golf. It's going to be incredible. This is a great weekend for it. I think it's the last weekend for it. No reservation is required, but if you can go to Lily Putt in Coon Rapids. There's also, they do an escape room, and they have a Haunted Mansion escape room going on right now. And the escape room is taking place in an abandoned haunted mansion, rumored to be inhabited by spirits unable to find peace. It is your team's job to find out the mysteries of the mansion and find proof of the spirit world. You must act fast due to only having 1 hour until midnight to make your escape. It is rumored none who stay past midnight ever return. Is your team up for the challenge? That does require a reservation, but boy, this is fun, folks. It's also really good for team building if you work at an office or something and looking for something to do, and that's going to go on for a while still. So if you want more information, go to lilyputt.net. That's LILLIPUTT.net. Check it out. It's going to be really a lot of fun. We're returning to our conversation with Dr. Bruce Rapuano, and we're talking about his book, and we're going to be talking about his experience, Dominion Lost, The Scientist's Own Alien Abduction Encounter. It's available on Amazon. And Dr. Bruce, I think we've waited long enough. I've been asking just general questions. I think it's time to start talking about what happened to you. What the night that, I mean, have you been abducted just once or had been multiple times?
Several times.
Okay.
Greg.
Yeah, that makes sense. So
now,
what? Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I'm looking forward to hearing all about it.
People always want to know, when was the first time you remember being abducted? I don't know why. We don't really know what the reason is, but the great majority of abductees say I was around 5 or 6 years old.
Yeah.
And I can make the same statement.
Wow.
I remember my first encounter where I'm pretty well. I mean, I was taken aboard a UFO, but I was just laying in bed. It was the summertime, and actually it was coincidentally 2 or 3 months before Betty and Barney Hill were abducted in September of '61. This was, as I say, late June, late July. I was just laying in bed shortly before dusk, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw a glint of light. It was a flash of light outside my bedroom window. And I looked toward the window and I saw the strangest looking airplane I'd ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
Flying silently right over the rooftops of the apartment buildings in our neighborhood, maybe 5 or 6 blocks away from where I was. Mm-hmm. And as I say, I thought I saw wings, but I remember the fuselage, the diameter of the fuselage was too great compared to the length of the fuselage. In other words, the airplane looked more circular than tubular. So it looked more like a saucer than an airplane. Although, as I
Absolutely.
said, I did think I saw wings.
Okay.
Ordinarily, I would be fascinated to look at anything strange flying in the sky. I couldn't take my eyes off it. Instead, I did something very atypical, very uncharacteristic. Um, I turned my head away from what I was watching, as if under command, put my head down on the pillow, and fell asleep. When I woke up, though, I wasn't in my bedroom anymore. I was on some type of very large table. I say large because I didn't know what material it was. Don't remember if it felt cold to the touch, but it was hard. And I knew that the length and the width were too large to be appropriate for a 6-year-old child. It's a
Right.
very large table. I um, I don't know where I was. It looked like I was in some type of clinical environment, maybe a hospital. Didn't know how I got there, but I was attracted by some commotion, maybe 20 feet from the foot of the table. So I slowly uh, sat up, and I couldn't believe what I saw in front of me. I saw literally dozens of small humanoid beings, the, fitting the classic gray alien anatomical appearance.
Sure.
appearance.
Hmm.
Uh, Large, disproportionately large, hairless heads, but white in color, all all uniform. Um, they looked no taller than I was, and the average height of a 6-year-old is 3.5 to 4 feet tall. And I thought, they look like doctors, but they're why were they so short? These are the strangest looking doctors I'd ever seen,
Hmm.
and but half of them were walking very briskly in one direction, half in the other direction. It looked like there was, I would call it a garage door type separation or entrance between separating my room from where they were. I don't know if where the door was, but it was an open um, area the size of as I say, the size of a garage door. And I had the impression that I was in a very large building, and there were multiple rooms like the room I was in. Although I was all alone in that room, just outside the room, I could see all these dozens of humanoid beings.
And
So I
you
don't want to give the whole story away. So I'm gonna ask,
right, and
see if
I was just going to
questions.
ask, you haven't made the connection that what you had one of the last things that you remember seeing on before you put your head down in the bed is where you are.
No, I knew I couldn't figure out how I got to where I was.
Yeah.
I thought I would. Suddenly, I was in a hospital. I really thought I was in some type of hospital, and I was being going to be subjected to an examination. Um, but that's I didn't think the beings, because I can only see them from the side. They look very strange. I didn't make the connection that they were threatening to me, that they
Sure.
were beings from another world. I somehow had come to the conclusion that that I was there for a particular purpose. But I didn't know what that purpose was.
Do you mind taking a couple questions from the comments section?
Oh no, not at all.
John asked the question, have you ever witnessed a nursery?
Now, many abductees have uh, mentioned that they've seen tanks, many tanks, dozens, maybe more than 100 tanks containing fetuses. I not only did I not see that, I did not see any other human beings. My impression was I was in a room and I was all alone. There were no other human beings in that room, but I had the impression that there were other rooms like that. There might have been other human beings in some or all of those rooms. But no, I did not see what the listener asked about.
Now, so and I know that there's some stuff in the book that you just kind of want to keep for people to read, and I totally
Hmm.
understand. So just let me know if those are some of the questions I ask are in that realm. But were you ever forced? Because I've read this with other abductees. Were you ever forced to procreate?
No, the only thing I can uh, recount to you is that, I'm thinking 6, 7 years after that. experience. After that event happened where I was abducted to some area where I was lying at an exam table, is I did have a very strange encounter where I thinking I'm 12, 13 years old, but in the middle of the night, this again was in the summertime, I was awoken as if under command, as if I sat up very quickly, was completely awake. The way I describe it is as it was if my body was pulled up to a sitting position, like a puppeteer would do to a puppet. And I thought to myself, something very interesting is going to happen. I was excited. I felt like a surge of electricity through my body. And then for some reason, I thought I had to leave the house in order to have this particular type of contact, quote unquote, contact experience. And, I'm not going to say too much more about the experience, except that in the middle of the night, without even changing out of my pajamas, without even putting on slippers, without even telling my parents, I left the house, walked across our property, crossed the street to another, to a neighbor's yard, walked across their front yard, and suddenly felt as if I should stop in a clearing in a neighbor's backyard. And at that point, I lost all sensation. Well, I lost all sense of sight. I saw a strange light in the sky, but after that, I couldn't see, I couldn't hear. I felt, I don't know if I was paralyzed or just felt no inclination to move at all. But I did have some sensation, because what I felt was what I now think was an object being placed over my groin, and that's all I knew. I didn't hear anything, I didn't see anything, and at that point, I woke up. I could see. I regained consciousness and simply walked back home into the house, got into bed, and fell asleep. And I describe a story in the book that was told by an abduction investigator of someone who was a few years older than I that had the same type of experience. For some reason, in his pajamas, he was compelled to get out of his bed, go outside into his backyard. Now, after having regressive hypnosis, he then was able to recall gray aliens coming out of the forest, taking him on board a UFO where he did admit to having genetic material removed.
Wow.
So that's a long answer to your question.
No, it's a good answer. It's a very good answer. And, I was also trying to be very honest, look up Betty and Barney Hill's niece who worked with MUFON, and I cannot remember her name off the top of my head.
Oh, Kathleen Martin.
Yes.
Isn't it Marden?
I think so. And she I've interviewed her, so it just goes to show how well I remember people's names. I mean, how many times have I said your name differently already tonight on the show? But the question I was curious about with you, because I asked her this, I asked her opinion, because she's had multiple encounters with aliens throughout her life, and I had asked her the question, did she feel like that, like she is, like it's the same aliens that are always working with her, almost like that she has like caseworkers that from, that are not from the earth, that have been following their whole like family, their whole family lineage. And I'm wondering if you had any thoughts on, like, for example, your encounters, if they were the same entities throughout the whole time or not.
I only have one experience that bears on that question. I was very young. I think I could have not have been more than 2 or 3 years old, and I was walking into our apartment building, walking up the stairs, and had my mother pick me up before we got to the last step before we were to enter our apartment. And I had this sense memory, just her picking me up somehow activated this memory of being with the same short 3.5 to 4 foot tall humanoids that I saw when I was on the exam table. And I had some type of a feeling of attachment to these beings, that they I remember, I don't know where I was. Was I walking? Was I in the air being floated up into the UFO? I couldn't tell, but I knew these particular humanoid beings. I had one on my right, one on my left. I was holding hands with them, and I recalled them as my mentors. And I had this at the same time. I had the feeling that although my parents were wonderful parents, wonderful people, the disappointment that my wonderful parents could not teach me what these alien mentors could teach me, and felt almost a sense of loss that I was now in the world of human beings and separated from them, as it were. So that's the only experience I had that kind of gets to that question. Did I, like a lot of abductees, report some type of long-term ongoing relationship with specific alien beings?
With that in case, then, do you, with the way that you felt towards these entities that were taking you on the ship and stuff, do you think that you're a starseed?
The only way I look at this is based on what's in the literature, and a number of abduction investigators have obtained evidence supporting the theory that there is some type of reproductive program involving human beings.
Yep.
That's mainly orchestrated by the Greys. They may have some other race of beings that's giving them orders, that's supervising them, as it were. But I think there's a lot of evidence of this, because many abductees like myself report not only that they're abducted, that they see these beings, but that they feel they've had some genetic material, whether it's sperm or ova, removed. A lot of abductees see alien human hybrid fetuses, either in tanks or as they develop, they're then introduced to these hybrid children and made to feel or made to understand that these beings were created in part from their DNA.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to say that if such a program exists, I strongly believe I was part of it, and I don't know what the purpose of the program is, but I would theorize that a very technologically advanced alien race has been abducting human beings for 60, 70 years, or perhaps much longer, to create this, what I call transgenic, genetically modified alien human race. For what purpose, I can only speculate.
Do you think that, have you given, I mean, whether anyone's ever admitted to it or not, do you feel like that's very possible that other members in your family have gone through, maybe not exact, but similar, prior to you ever being the focus for them?
Well, I have a chapter in the book where I describe some of the very, I won't say possible, but highly likely adverse consequences of the alien abduction. And because a lot of the abductees, like myself, recall implants, recall unexplained nosebleeds like I did, actually recall a nasal implant. And I talk in the book about the memory I have of my grandfather, which was related to me by my father, who had a very unusual medical condition called cavernous sinus thrombosis. This was a blood clot infection in one of the blood sinuses behind the nose. And interestingly, when I researched it, I found there was only a 1 in 19 million chance that he could develop the condition that resulted from this cavernous sinus thrombosis, which was meningitis of the brain, which took his life.
Okay. And
so I theorized that he might have been also an abductee, because the implantation of these nasal implants would likely use the same route through the nasal cavity that neurosurgeons use to resect tumors in the pituitary gland. And in those particular procedures, this incidence of infection in the blood sinus, the nasal sinuses, and meningitis goes up 1,000-fold or more, and makes it much more likely that patient can have a meningitis that could potentially take his or her life. So my theory is that it's much more likely that my grandfather had some type of intervention, some medical intervention involving the nasal cavity that caused his meningitis that eventually took his life, than some other medical condition that would only arise maybe 1 in 20 million, with an incidence of 1 in 20 million.
Incredible.
So I do think that my family is an example of this intergenerational aspect of the alien abduction phenomenon that has been reported by a number of abduction investigators.
Absolutely incredible. Wow, what an incredible conversation. I'd like to take another break. I see Chuck has a question. We'll get to that when we get back. We are talking about the book, Dominion Lost, a scientist's own alien abduction encounters with Dr. Bruce Rapuano. You're listening to GhostBox Radio on AM 950. And join me tomorrow on GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun. We're going to have on author Olivia James. She's going to join us to discuss her book, Gray Mouse, Sex, Space, and Mind Control. This is another story that you don't think this stuff is out there, such as alien abductions, or even stuff like government having control over people. This might not be the best week for you to listen. This is going to be quite the interesting conversation as well. I do also want to quickly remind folks, we're doing our special 4-hour Halloween episode this Thursday, Halloween, 7 p.m. to 11 p.m., and that's going to be over at the 300 Clifton. And don't forget, folks, you can go ahead and you can get tickets actually to take part in the investigation, take part in the party atmosphere that's happening at the Clifton, including trolley rides and psychic mediums and music and food, and also our live broadcast. Go over to minneapolistrolleytours.com/Halloween. And we talked about how we're going to have a special episode of Myth or Mystery that we're going to air that time too. You all hear, if you just only listen to me on the radio, I talk about it all the time, but you're going to be able to experience it. And the folks at Myth or Mystery sent us a bunch of T-shirts that we are going to be giving away, and other good stuff at the broadcast for people who are in attendance. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Come on out, check it out, and just enjoy your Halloween with us. We'd really be honored if you would do that. We are talking with Dr. Bruce Rapuano. We're talking about Dominion Lost, a scientist's own alien abduction encounters. What a fascinating conversation. And, you know, I'm just going to say, I think that you're helping people in the audience tonight because I think there is stuff that's happening that, people kind of, we talked about this prior to the show. People keep stuff close to their chest, and I don't blame them at all. Chuck had a question, and Chuck wanted to know, was your mobility hindered in any way, or were you able to move while you're on the craft?
That's interesting because I seem to wake up and have no restriction in my body movements. In fact, not only did I sit up, but I always like to tell the audience that I actually interacted with the aliens. I pointed at them, outstretched my right hand, pointed at them and said, you're not my doctors. And so I had totally unrestricted movement. But what happened is I drew attention to myself, and I felt what seemed like a hand on my chest. It was a hand that was as large or larger than my abdomen and chest combined. I couldn't see who was behind me, but I felt a gentle pressure, which I did not resist. And I felt it push me back down on the table, and I lost consciousness. So at that point, although I was physically able to move, it was almost as if I had no will to resist being pushed back down on the table. So that the type of control that was exerted over me at that time was more mental than physical.
Sure.
And I think that's an example of the types of control that's exerted over abductees. That not just in my case, but many abductees have made the same comment.
It kind of sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong here, though. You seem pretty compliant with them, though, too, right? That I mean, it didn't. I mean, you hear about some who have said that they really like tried to fight and get out or whatever else. But it seemed like that you were very accepting of the situation.
Yes, I was, and most abductees are. As I think, as one abductee explained that, I've learned to go along with the program, and I've always followed the instructions, and I've been able to come home. And
Yeah.
so why should I change? Why should I do any? At this point, after many abductions, this particular individual concluded, why change now? I was able to survive the encounter. I think that's the way the first reported alien abductee also responded. Barney Hill.
Mhm.
He even closed his eyes and he told himself, be calm, because I don't want to do anything that would threaten my life or my wife's life.
Yeah.
Let me just get us through this so we can get in our car and go home.
Though Betty, not maybe she wasn't necessarily physically, but she was
Right.
she was very outspoken, and it was very interesting that those two were very like, I don't want to say polar opposites when it came to that, but they certainly had different approaches to it as well.
Yes. Yes.
Very interesting. Now, I don't know if you have children or not, but if you do, are you concerned, or are you okay with that this might be happening with them or to them?
Well, I don't have children.
Okay.
And I always thought, maybe in the back of my mind, you know, this was a consideration. I don't,
Sure.
because as Dr. David Jacobs has written, if you're abducted, it's much more likely compared to someone who's not abducted that you're not only were your parents abducted, but your children will be as well.
Yeah.
So
That's what I kind of was. That's what I was thinking, because that, and especially that whole thing, that lineage. Like, is there,
right.
are they just watching you develop, as like your family develop, your family grow, whatever, and whatever the reason is. And you had mentioned that you really, no one knows what the purpose of all this is about, though, right? I mean, in terms of the grand scheme, the big plan.
Why are they interested in certain bloodlines?
Right.
Are they interested with people that have a certain genetic background so that they'll be able to introduce novel genes, novel human genes, or modified, mutated genes, or alien DNA that will interact with the remaining genes in the way that they want, so that there will be no negative interactions. But that's why they may be interested in certain bloodlines with people that have a specific genetic background, which is similar to what we do in biological research when we're modifying the genome of a rodent, a rat, or a mice, or a mouse to see what effect that's going to have. And that may be the reason why they're only focusing on certain families.
Is that the reason why you got into what you got into, your career?
Well, to tell you the truth, within a couple of years of having that experience I talked about, where I was compelled to leave my bedroom in the middle of the night and walk outside and cross over to our neighbor's property. Within a year of that, I was very interested in the function of the brain and neurobiology and extrasensory ability. I did a lot of reading to the point where I was actually allowed to lecture to the class about ESP and so forth. That was kind of, at that time, there was a great burgeoning interest in that particular field, the field of parapsychology. And lo and behold, several years later, I decided I was going to major in neurobiology in college and then go on to get a PhD in neuroscience. So yes, I do think that my early experiences with ETs or aliens or interdimensionals, wherever they come from, had an impact on my development as a person and maybe impacted my choice of profession.
Very much so. Now, you had mentioned about the Greys. Have you seen any other types of aliens besides Greys?
No, I have not. And many people who find that only the Greys are dealing with them during the abduction scenario are also often accompanied by larger, taller Greys, or sometimes aliens that look more insectoid, whereas the Greys maybe look more humanoid.
Right.
I've only seen the beings with the same anatomical appearance, the same size, and I'm not interested in meeting any new species at this point.
Well, and I ask because I've always gotten the impression, and there's no one that told me this. This is through the stuff that's happened with me, is that the Greys are, in a sense, the worker bee class.
Mm-hmm.
Do you get that?
Yes, many abductees have said this.
Okay.
Especially whether because they don't have any individual personality. They all seem to be doing the same function, almost working as if they had one mind, a hive mind.
Yeah.
And then they see, and whenever there's a conflict or something goes wrong with whatever experiment is being done on the human being, they often look to the taller Grey, who seems to be acting in a supervisory capacity, that kind of steps in to resolve the issue or resolve the problem, calm the human being down if there's any type of a conflict. And then I also talk in the book about how I think that the Greys were probably genetically engineered to be drones, worker bees, as it were, by this more dominant and more advanced species.
Incredible, absolutely incredible. Coley in the comments, she says that I have met 3 different kinds. Which I do not doubt whatsoever. I do find it very interesting, and I have a friend that's watching tonight. To my friend, this is the cover of the book, and what gets my interest very much. I know it's just art, but it's all the Greys in the background over here, and a friend and I have actually, during a CE5 experiment, had seen something very similar to what that is with all of them.
Wow.
And they weren't fully formed like this, but they were there, and we both got in a lot of light dancing and trees and stuff. And so I'm looking at this, and I'm like, oh my God, because it's just like it's not a. I don't know what to say about it, but it's not a great memory. Let's put it that way. It's not like we were in harm's way per se, but I felt like with the experiment we were doing, we were taking things maybe a little bit further than we should be doing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Oh, sure. For me, what was striking was that the beings depicted in the final scenes of Steven Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind, if you remember that movie,
absolutely
looked exactly like the beings that I saw. So that movie was released 16 years after I had that particular experience. And when I saw the movie, and then I was so struck by that. And then I read that Spielberg used 6-year-old girls to, with prosthetics and to make them look like the Greys, to resemble the aliens, to resemble the ETs. And as I say, that was, I thought they were my size. They were no taller than I was, and as I said, that was no taller than 3.5 to 4 foot tall, which is the average height for a 6-year-old. But yeah, I have not engaged in any of that CE5 activity.
Yeah,
to try to meet them again.
Absolutely, no. It's I keep knocking on that door, and then I got to be careful with it. That's for sure. The book is called A Scientist's Own. Let me get it backwards. Dominion Lost: A Scientist's Own Alien Abduction Encounters. There's an abridged version. There is an unabridged version. They're on Amazon, and you have to go and get this book because we only just talked a little bit about it. Dr. Bruce, thank you so very much. What an incredible conversation tonight.
It was great talking to you, Greg, especially since I think we have an affinity. You have some experience. We share some experiences in common.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
We'll be back tomorrow with Olivia James. Everyone, have a good night.